Hello, everyone, and welcome back to SCM590, Applied Concepts in Supply Chain Management. As I spoke about, we're going to do some mini lectures on the current state of supply chain management and just try to bring everybody, refresh everybody on what's happening in this industry and this discipline, if you will. And then we'll go through a couple of these, and then we'll talk a little bit about the cases at the end. So here we go. I think this pretty well tells it all, and I think to give you an idea, at least how I view it, and others view it, the importance of what we're doing in this discipline. This is from Don Snyder, who's the founder of Snyder Transport, and I think it says a lot that this is much more than just shipping and receiving and warehousing, and it truly is. It really has societal impacts. It has economic impacts. It has consumer impacts. It affects each and every one of us every day. We don't necessarily realize it, recognize it, or even see it for that matter. But the supply chain is all around us. And what we're doing is trying to make this whole world a better place for all of its citizens through the work that we're doing here in this discipline. That's a pretty big responsibility when you think about it. So let's see if we believe in that at the end of this mini lecture. Okay, supply chain management evolved basically in three different times, from the 1960s, the 80s, and the 90s. I'll show you a little bit of a graphic on this in just a second. In real actuality, it started in World War II. It started with the Quartermaster Corps. And it started with the fact, if you go back to General Patton and his rush with the Third Army from France into Germany, and the fact that they had to stop because they ran out of gas for the tanks. And had they had the fuel in place, and if Patton had been allowed to continue, this might be a very different world than what it was, because they couldn't. That did not happen. So from World War II, we got this concept of having the right product at the right place at the right time. And that grew into this thing we call physical distribution, which actually was more or less conceived as an organizational process in 1963, and formed by about 25 academics and large corporate physical distribution execs. That's what they were called at that time. Physical distribution, VP distribution, VP physical distribution. And then in the 80s, 20 years later, we morphed into something called business logistics, which included more than just the physical side, but included some other activities like inventory management. It was really primarily the big one that came into place. And then in the 90s, a little shorter time frame, we went into supply chain management, which is the current definition that we use, and it's been around now for over 20 years, so it's probably we need a new one. There is a new one out there. It kind of takes it away from what we historically look at as supply chain and puts it in more of a corporate mode. It's called integrated business planning. You'll see a lot of consulting things on integrated business planning. It is still pretty much the same thing here, but it puts it into what I would call the C-suite, the executive suite in terms of its management. We're going to talk about supply chain. That's what we're going to talk about. Okay, so this is the graphic I was talking about. So when I started way back in the 15th century, we talked about physical distribution. So physical distribution was transportation, it was warehousing here, it was materials handling, there was some packaging, though not a lot at that time, inventory management, distribution planning was actually my very first job, was distribution planning. So these activities here kind of followed this stream of physical distribution. So you can kind of see that. And then in the 80s, the roles changed, and we grew into logistics. So logistics became included such activities as demand forecasting, production planning in terms of net requirements planning, kept all the same ones we had, Packaging came into a little more of a norm under materials and physical distribution coming together into this logistics concept. Customer service started to come under logistics. Order processing came there. So you had on the distribution side, you had responsibility for the inventory planning, order processing, transportation, customer service. So these and warehousing. So these were pretty much the core competencies on this side. But on this side, what was happening particularly in customer service was filtering back down into manufacturing and inventory, production planning, and requirements planning. Purchasing was always pretty much outside of it and remained its own silo in and of itself. And then when we went to the 90s, the definition changed to include all of this. This is far more an academic definition than it is a practical implementation in industry. In many cases, these two terms are used interchangeably. Within industry, they are not the same. They are nowhere near the same because supply chain management picks up these things. The idea of strategic planning, information technology, marketing and sales, finance, dotted line, but I mean the responsibility and the cross-functional influence that supply chain management has on all of this here. So if you look at my resume, you'll see physical distribution. That's pretty much Sherwood Medical right there. Sherwood was also here. We picked up a little bit of this. We got into distribution, we got into what we call DRP or distribution requirements planning. And at Karcher, and Emerson was more over here. A lot of procurement and some and certainly transportation and some strategic planning. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the course. And supply chain management was where all this kind of came together, and that was Karcher. So that's a little bit about how all this kind of came about, and that's how it's time phased, and a little bit of where my experience kind of pretty much follows the evolution of this overall up to the supply chain management concept we have today. So it evolved from a physical flow to an information flow and a financial flow. And right now, people are talking more and more about that. The competition of the future is going to be between supply chains and not firms. So if you think the omni-channel retail experience right now, it's exactly what it is. Is your supply chain better than my supply chain? And when you look at the activities shown in the previous slide of what's in the supply chain, I think you can see why this comment is not that far off. Quality is pretty much expected now. If you don't have a quality product, you're not going to make it anyway. And pricing is so transparent, you're not going to be able to price yourself below anybody because they know it. So it gets down to service, it gets down to customer experience, and it gets down to value. And in many ways, in this day and age, it's getting down to convenience. Is your supply chain more convenient to me as a consumer than your competitors? And if it is, you'll probably get my business. So going back to some definitions back in '99, we have this situation where it was collaborative. It was interorganizational, primarily internal collaborative organizational business operations. We weren't dealing as much with the extended supply chain as we are today with the global marketplaces and the global supply networks. So we were primarily working with, let's get manufacturing and sales and finance to all work together with logistics to come up with a better answer. So this is where it was back in 1999. And this is what Coyle, who's one of the leading authors in this, spoke about. He defined it as a flow of products and services on an end-to-end basis up and down the supply chain, connected by transportation and storage, integrated by information planning and business integration, and measured on cost and service. So one big miss here is finance, and that got picked up the next time around. So in 2007, we had not generally or universally picked up finance as one of the key attributes. Measured on cost and service was the metric then. It still is a very key metric, but it's not the only metric now. And the metrics are being more defined about what's the purpose of the business. And that's a whole discussion we'll have when we get into, believe it or not, demand planning. That's really where that comes into play. So now this is the current one right now. It encompasses the planning and management of all activities and sourcing and procurement. So we've added sourcing and procurement into this, the conversion side, and all logistics management activities. And it's a coordination and collaboration with channel partners, and it integrates supply and demand within and across the companies. So this is, again, this big overarching definition. So what we're doing is what it says right here. We're driving the coordination of process and activity across the company and across the customer base and across the supplier base. So we're linking all the major business function and business processes together within one process. So again, let me differentiate here. We're not talking about an organization. We're talking about a process. You don't have to have a supply chain organization to do supply chain management. You have to have a supply chain process, which includes a variety of organizations coming together to build this process. And you'll see that a lot more clearly as we go along. So from a core standpoint, generally those of us we're looking at it as every product in the world that reaches the customer requires multiple organizations. If you feel differently, I would be very happy to see you define that in a different way. It is the active management, not the passive, but the active management of these activities to maximize value and sustain and achieve a competitive advantage. This is not passive. This is not a corporate role. It's in terms of just gathering information and reporting it. It's an active management activity. And the fact that, as we mentioned, that the organizations that are in the supply chain are linked together through physical and information flows. And those partnerships form add value for whichever partners are working together, and then also contribute to an excellent or a very high level customer experience. Now, that's kind of the manufacturing side of it, but there's another side of supply chain as well, and that's called the services supply chain. And the services supply chain differentiates itself from the product supply chain in that the products, there are no products. The products are services. So you're talking about auditing, financial, and accounting. And other good supply chain services would be freight brokerage, digital freight matching, inventory management, using third parties, strategic analysis and analytics. This would be third party. So these are all services. And the firms that are in this space are national and international, obviously. And this is all about getting closer to the customer, getting closer to the flow of information, and developing that relationship just like you do on the product side. So it doesn't matter whether you're on the product side or the services side. The idea of building relationships, collaborating, alliances, and building and the information are still absolutely valid. So nothing really particularly changes here, except that you're measured by your ability to manage the information, and you're more measured on responsiveness, efficiency, and controlling. So if your broker or your forwarder is not doing a very good job for you, or you're having trouble with documents or shipment delays or disruptions of any sort, the chances are you're going to replace that player, that services player. So that's the difference between product and services supply chain, but there is a service supply chain. So here again, little bit more on the difference. In a product supply chain, there's flow of information in physical products, and a service supply chain is primarily information. Contrary to a service supply chain, in a product supply chain, transportation and inventory are major cost components, but they're not in a service supply chain. and you can't hold a service in inventory generally. So that's the matching capacity I just spoke about. And the price of information, the cost of information is much higher to get than in a product supply chain. So very, very similar goals, right location, the right time, and the right form to the right person. So that's very similar to what we do in the product side as well. So it ultimately gets down to this. It gets down, it's a three-legged stool. This is what it looks like. It's goods, information, and money. So all three of these are part of supply chain management, and we're going to explore all three of these over the course of this semester. Now, the really neat thing is that supply chain management never takes a break. It's always on, as we say. It's 100% part of the customer experience, and if the customer has a bad experience, they want to talk to somebody. So there's few areas in business that allow you to experience the massive transformation in technology, the opportunity to do so many different things within a field and challenge yourself, and at the same time really commit yourself to continuous learning. To be successful in this business, you really have to do that. You really have to commit yourself to continuous learning. But there's so many things going on. Here's just a list of things that we're doing. We're changing the overall computing model. We have third-party guys like UPS are putting 3D printers on trucks. We're very heavily and leading the way in robotics and automation and sensors and wearables, driverless vehicles. So if you're in engineering, or if you're in marketing, or if you're in whatever, there's a place and a home for you within supply chain management. And the point is, these are all very active things that are going on right now. And we're always looking for talent. We're looking for talent because a whole bunch of folks are leaving now. So as the demographic has changed, as the boomer generation like me, for example, as we start to leave the industry, there aren't enough of you to pick up all the capacity that we need. So there's not only shortages in very key roles like truck drivers and even skilled warehouse workers and robotics engineers and things like that. But we need supply chain managers. We need men and women. And if you look at some of the gender studies now, women are playing a very important role in supply chain as it becomes less and less a man's game, if you will. It becomes more and more technology driven, relationship driven. So it's not unusual at all to see women in very senior roles in supply chain companies. So we're going to have a lot of jobs. We need to focus on a skilled workforce. We have to teach them how to learn new technologies. We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we talk about manufacturing strategies. We need purple people, what we talk about. So blue people have the business skills. And the red people have the skill. So call this qualitative, call this quantitative. You need both, and that makes you purple. Okay, so this is what it is. You have to be customer focused. You have to be process owners. You have to be leaders. You have to be good in working with people. You have to be persuasive, and you need to realize you're going to be in a position of influence. And you are in many ways. What you do has a very real impact on the success of the firm. So it's a different kind of a job if you're looking for that. So I think that's it for this, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the next mini lecture.